Right, okay, here's another group. We talked to Family First, who feel that they have, been vindicated, that there's been a change of atmosphere and temperature on the issues they're concerned about. Another group who are probably feeling optimistic in the wake of the electoral change, and more specifically, I think, the coalition announcements last Friday, is our oil and gas industry, who and their chief lobbying organisation is Energy Resources Aotearoa. Their chief executive is John Carnegie, and he joins us in the studio now. John.
Good morning, Sean.
Your industry must have been heartened by the very clear message delivered last Friday that basically you can explore again for natural resources in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, look, clearly we think that energy policy has lost its way, and so we're optimistic, actually, that the government will reset the investment climate, and that we'll be able to get the energy that the economy so sorely needs to become prosperous and productive.
Yeah. The Greens have zeroed in on this. They're running a petition, though it seems rather a waste of time to me if you've just had an election, to keep the oil and gas exploration ban on. Are you worried at all about that?
Oh no! Look, let me just stand back for a minute. It's easy to forget where our energy comes from.
Yeah.
We turn on the light switch and we think, it's the light's there.
Yeah.
But actually, look, energy is just so fundamental to our economy, to our economic growth and our prosperity, and of course, what energy translates into is to export revenue, into jobs, into investment, actually into the health and well-being of all New Zealanders. So what we need is an energy system which is diverse, which is secure, which is reliable, which is affordable. And, we just think over the last so many years that the system has got out of balance. And actually, that's no better demonstrated, to be honest, than the situation that the last government has left the energy sector. It's actually sitting on a knife edge.
Yeah.
Yep. We've got, we've got a dry weather pattern coming. So we've got issues potentially with the lakes going into next winter. We've got energy prices rising.
Yep.
We've got Transpower, which almost weekly now, it would seem, are issuing things called consumer advisory notices. So they're notices that warn of a potential shortfall of generation capacity.
Yeah.
So in other words, blackouts.
Yeah.
And of course, finally, we haven't had the investment in the fast start gas-fired peakers that we need to underpin the renewable electricity system growth.
And to explain to people, that's having some resilience in the system. You can turn on extra energy when demand spikes without having ridiculous cost associated with that.
Yeah, well, look, everyone wants more renewable forms of electricity and energy. Everyone.
Yeah.
The issue is when the lakes aren't full, so when it doesn't rain, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you need something to underpin. It's called firming the electricity system. You need something to firm it.
Yeah.
Now, batteries are a great solution. Unfortunately for New Zealand, if we have a dry winter or a dry year, we have a 3-month problem, not a 3-hour problem. So batteries can help with instantaneous peak problems. They cannot help us with with serious outages.
Yeah. John, with the removal of the ban on oil and gas exploration, that doesn't sound, though, like that's going to fix that problem in the short term. What does it do? Send a long-term signal that you get back into energy exploration in New Zealand and you get the industry here moving again?
Oh, look, it's a bit of a misconception that it's just long-term.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we've got some incumbent players here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So they are ready, subject to ensuring we have the right regulatory settings.
David Seymour we had on this morning said, if regulation is getting the way of people doing business and helping the country, I'm going to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, look, here's hoping that happens. But so subject to the right policy and commercial and economic circumstances, the most obvious parties that will play will be the incumbents, and they will look to what's called near-field tie-ins. So they will go, well, what's the least cost way of bringing on energy quicker? They may well look to get permits near their existing permits and use the existing infrastructure to drill across boundaries. So that's, I mean, I don't know whether that's going to happen, but that's the most likely. Then, of course, we have to have a government and an energy and resources ministers out around the world telling all investors right across the energy sector as well as across the economy that we're open for business.
Right.
That we're open for business and that the government
would those
acted to
international
reduce...
players trust us, though? Because if your government changes in 3 years, the Greens are back in and the band's back on. And these are long-term investment decisions. A lot of money involved in this prospecting.
Of course. And they are big players. Even our domestic players are big energy players. They will take make risk-adjusted decisions. So they will make an assessment of what's happening to sovereign risk now and where it might be in 3, 6, 9 years' time. But the issue is that just as when Labor introduced the ban, they honoured all existing permits, we would expect the same, and those permits have potentially 10, 20, 30, 40 year life.
So we haven't completely stopped the exploration because those existing permits were honoured. There's actually still some infrastructure, some people who can do this stuff in the country right now.
Of course. That's both onshore and offshore.
Which probably makes it easier to rack things up and get things up to a higher capacity.
Again, depending on what their assessment is of the sovereign risk and the future regulatory risk.
Overall, John, one would say, and there's been much made of this by the news media and some commentators, it seems to me, and I would make this observation globally, that the intensity of concern over anthropological climate change and the extent to which governments reflect or the public are prepared to buy the catastrophic nature of the narrative is waning somewhat. And I know that your industry is dreadfully careful not to be labelled climate change deniers or anti-environmentalists. But I feel in New Zealand and globally, a change in the wind to a more rational and practical approach.
Well, those
issues.
Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, Sean. And the reason we're dreadfully careful is because we believe that we need to reduce our emissions and that you just have to look at things like Cyclone Gabriel to see that you need an energy system
John,
that
there's no evidence whatsoever
I'm not drawing
climate change.
But there are increased weather impacts.
No, there are. There aren't.
Well,
sorry, John, they're not. There's no empirical evidence to suggest that, and I just can't say that because it's not true.
We are quite comfortable with a government target of reducing emissions to net zero by 2050.